all kinds of sponsored things will come out first. So I don't think sex is something that the internet should be teaching your child. It is something that you as a parent should be talking to your child about.
Right. So thank you, Dr. Vaz. That was very, very relevant and I think very, very important for parents to know. Um, uh, Mr. Rove, as a personal security architect, what communication strategies do you think will strengthen this communication that Dr. Vaz just spoke about?
I think doctor just gave away a very, very important cue for me to, pick up from there. Uh, from the age of 0 to possibly, considering today's smart generation, uh, from the age of 0 to possibly around 8 to 10 years, uh, the parents need to be playing a role of a guardian, correct? Where you are guarding your kids, correct? It could be physical guarding, it could be mental guarding, emotional guarding, everything. You are the guardian. Okay. From the age of 10 to 21, you need to play a role of a friend, and that's exactly where the doctor said that we are not. See, kids are finding, as she perfectly said, kids are finding it easier to talk about sex and related subjects to their friends instead of parents. Why? Because the parents are so focused on marks and exams and on everything that is not really helping them evolve intellectually. Correct? We're focusing on so much on academics right now. So that's why from age 10 to 21, we need to be their friend. Okay, of course, guardian is also there, but the role is a little reduced now. From the age of 21 and beyond, we need to play a role of their mentor and guide. Now, this is very, very important. We as parents, we are transitioning from one phase to the other. But the challenge is that we are not able to understand this transition that our kids need. And we are just sticking to one part. Okay, I am the father. My job is to ask him for the marks. My job is to take him out. That's it. And we have stereotyped ourselves. Now, this is where once we understand this transition that we need to have with our kids, these transitions will help us open up the channels of communication with our with our kids, and that is very important, because only when we open communication channels will they be comfortable in talking to us about these things. Now, as as most of us agree that most of the kids who were on the boys locker room group, they did not end up there by choice. They were possibly forced by peer pressure. Now, what is peer pressure?
Right. In fact, coming to a very important point, I want to talk about two very important things. One is very pertinent to the lockdown period that we are going through. Um all of us have had to step up in our technology usage. And the last time we spoke, Dr. Watts, we spoke about the spike in screen time, right? Now, with this spike, especially for high school kids, because there's a lot of learning to do, a lot of screen time required. How do parents even manage this situation? The kind of screen time they are required to have. How much can parents monitor really? Is it practical? What kind of practical tactics can be used without being hurtful to them, because it's a very sensitive age? How can we do this?
So is the question to me?
Yes, Dr. Vats.
Okay. So what we have done as a school, because we are a very technologically favoring school, because we believe in technology literacy. It is very important that you can't keep children away from media, from technology, from screens. So from early childhood, you should have something called technology literacy. Like for our very young babies, we teach them that screen time only for 20 minutes. You must keep the distance of the screen, how much from your eyes, etc. Tell your daddies not to put the phone in the pocket because it's near the heart. These kind of small things that we teach them. For parents, we teach them that for children between the ages of birth to 6 years, it's brain development time. Please keep the phone on airplane mode so that the rays from the phone are not harming your toddler. Also, it will help you because the pop-ups won't come. You know, see, if your husband has Googled some wrong websites and the same phone is then handed to your toddler, when your toddler is watching something on YouTube, the pop-ups of that site will come on the YouTube slide because the phone doesn't know who's using it right now. So it is very important technology literacy. Number 3, it is very important for parents to have a checklist. Is this screen time necessary or unnecessary? Is this screen time responsive or not responsive? Which means, is my child going to be able to participate in the screen time, or it is just a reactive, you know, rhyme dekh raha hai, bas dekh raha hai. That is not required. And number 3, is the content good for my child or is the content not good for my child? If you have these criteria and then choose the screen time for your child, and for older children, schools will give them a lot of online content. You have Byju's now, who has put all the curriculum which is online. Then they are trying to say that don't go for tuition classes, come here. There is flipped classrooms, which is happening in many schools. So you won't be able to keep the child away from screen time, but you can ensure that screen time becomes healthy, which means only at a particular time of the day. And please ensure that screen time is always followed with either physical activity or meditative activities. Very, very important. So what we have done in our curriculum also, that after a short screen time, we've either given them yoga, or we have given them a cooking activity, or we've given them a physical game. Because it's very, very important that the brain understands that when I'm completely cued into screen, when I come out of that screen, I need to have completely non-screen activities that involve the entire body and brain. So if parents are educated about this, then parents will know what to do and when to do. But my point is that these days, parents are very afraid of disciplining children. They're very afraid of correcting their children. Because they are in this haste of being a child's friend right from birth. I'm sorry, parents, you are a parent, and a parent is a word used because otherwise we would have said, no, these are the two friends of the child. Why do we say these are the parents of the child? A parent has a different duty. A parent's job is to ensure that the child is only exposed to the right things, however much the child throws a tantrum. It is always, understand, after the age of 2 to the age of 8 is a power struggle between children and their parents. And in this power struggle, if you make it a power struggle and start behaving with the child like a child, then the child is never going to listen to you. It's very important that you are calm, you're composed, and you're very clear and concise to your child that this is allowed and this is not allowed, sweetheart. And I'm not going to allow it. Then children understand boundaries, children understand rules, and the same boundaries are then applied whether it is screen time, whether it is going out time, whether it is eating time, etc. So I think it's all about, it's doable. It's just that some parents don't want to do it and feel if the school handles this responsibility also, it will be better. Some parents don't get that much time with the child. The child is forever in the daycare or with a nanny, so they feel I don't get that time. But I tell those parents, stop feeling guilty. Whatever rules you want for your child, whether your in-laws are looking after the child or the daycare is looking after the child, make the rules very clear to this caretaker that this is what I want for my child and this is what I don't want for my child. With in-laws, of course, you'll have to be a little more sensitive and sit down with them and explain to them why you don't want the child to be watching certain things. They are not the child's enemy. So there is a way out of everything as long as you believe that I want this for my child.
Right. And Dr. Watts, you also seem to be stressing on the point that between the ages of 2 and 8, the kind of interactions and the kind of rules that we set will actually decide how they behave in their teen years and how it's going to be a precedent.
I'll tell you, Devi, bonding. Bonding is a word that we've forgotten in parenthood. If there is a bond between a parent and a child, that bond continues. The child did not suddenly become a teenager. My question to these parents whose children were on this locker room is, why did they stop knowing what their child is doing, or what their child is thinking, or how their child is behaving? Where did your bond with your child go? That means it disappeared. And that's why I've written in my blog also that we are moving children from babies to children, and we are taking away their childhood and straight away making them teenagers. We talk about stupid things too early with them. We talk about all kinds of nonsense too early with them. We are not careful about the language we are using in front of them. We take them to watch adult movies. I mean, I've given an example in my blog, films like Good News. It has content for adults. It's a nice movie for adults. You can't take an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old to watch a movie like that. So who do you blame at that time? Of course, it will have to be a parent who will have to take these decisions. You can't say that the film industry has to stop making such movies. The film industry has given a certificate to, the censor board has given a certificate, but we are still taking children to see such movies. Attachment and bonding. My humble appeal to all parents, at every stage of your child's life, you must not lose it. If you have that, your child knows what you want, how you want, and what is right and wrong for them. You know, there is a Disney movie, Pinocchio, and there is a lovely song in that when you don't know right from wrong, give a little whistle and let your conscience be your guide. Who is this conscience? What is this conscience? In the first years of life, it is the parent who becomes the child's conscience. And it is ingrained so well that once the child grows older, the parent physically is not required to be the conscience. The conscience has now internalized. That is a process that many parents are not understanding or bringing into the parent-child relationship.
Very rightly said, Dr. Watts. Mr. Rowe, what do you think about what Dr. Watts said? I think she raised a very relevant point about parents not knowing and suddenly they become teenagers. How aware do you think parents are about their kids' present digital conduct? And what patterns can we put in place to actually bridge this gap between the parent and the child?
I think, I'm just thinking that I wish Dr. Swati was around when I was growing up. It would have been such an amazing treat to, listen to such massive logic at once.
I agree.
I mean, every single word that she's spoken is bang on. You're asking about how can parents, get to know or how can they bond, the word she used, with the kids, is that the best way, start talking about issues that matter to the kids today. Okay, because see, we have around 40, 50 channels, news channels coming in 20 different languages. And I have seen so many parents, when they come back home, all they do is they just flip from one news channel to the other, trying to catch up what they've missed during the day. But the challenge is that, you are so keen, you're so interested about what you've missed out in the world, and you don't really know what your kid has been through in the school that day. That's where we need to understand and put our priorities straight. And this is one of the main reasons why for the last 7.5, 8 years now, I do not have a television at home. I don't have a television at home, and I don't get newspaper at home.
Right.
Why? Because if I want something, I'll go onto the internet, I'll get it. I don't want somebody else coming into my house and, grabbing my attention and out of my family time.
Right.
So this is very, very important. And, talking about the kids who have been on the locker room. See, kids get into these places for various reasons. Some kids do that because, as Madam said, there's a curiosity, sexual curiosity that certain age develops. The second reason is that, they don't have attention. They don't get attention at home. Correct. So they are doing something that will get them attention. Okay. Now, the challenge is that they do not understand what kind of attention is what they will get. Why? Because they're not making an informed choice. So that is very important. So it's
Yeah.
very important that we, sorry.
Mr. Dove, I would like to add something to that. When you say attention, now as a parent, I would like to say that even when parents are giving the kind of attention that the child deserves, I think the child will still go for attention with their peers because that's what they want. They want peer acceptance. How to address that?
Yeah.
Dr. Watts wants to say something. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to understand the stages of emotional and social development. After the age of 6, it's mostly, if you see, even in play, group games start coming in, which means your peer group starts influencing you more. And it is at this time that the parents need to choose their children's friends very, very wisely. Because if you will notice in a school, the same friends group remains from standard 1 to standard 10. It is the same group of mothers who meet. It's the same group of children who meet. So the parents also need to choose their groups from the school very, very wisely. Children who stay around them, who may have the same kind of the parenting ideas, etc. Social development is something where peers become more important. And that is where parents need to realize that if you mollycoddle your children too much after the age of 6, then they start resenting that attention. And as Mr. Rahul said very correctly, attention is of two types. One is positive attention and one is negative attention. So when you don't get positive attention from your parents and all the time they're just asking you for marks and don't do this and don't do that, then they learn to get negative attention from the parents. And that's why they do these kind of things. But Devi, my problem with these locker rooms is not about the language that they had used. It is not about the bullying. My problem with this locker room is with one word, rape, and how they have become very comfortable with that word, how they have accepted that word, how they have used the word as if they are doing something very powerful. That means this group has not understood the enormity of the horribleness of the word rape. They have only looked at it as a power that boys can have over girls. And this kind of an attitude is something that schools and parents should be worried about, not about the bad words. Our generation also used bad words. This generation is also using bad words. I'm not worried about that. I am more worried about them thinking that rape is acceptable. And if we allow this to happen, rape cases will never go down in this country. And this year, I blame all the adults who use the BCMC and C bad words in front of children. I have seen fathers do it while driving when they when they miss a signal or when somebody goes in front of them. Immediately, this bad word comes out of their mouth. I want parents to take a deep breath and ask themselves, do they know the meaning of these bad words? What are they teaching these children? That the solution for every problem in life is this? Then what have you taught your children? So my main problem with these locker rooms or anything that happened in Mumbai or anywhere else is, why is this generation accepting and celebrating rape?
Right.
Devi, I just want to add a
Sure.
quick thing here. We were talking about attention now, and you said that how even if the parents give the attention, the kids still tend to go towards the friends. And
Yeah,
I
because
think
they want acceptance, social acceptance, right?
not just that, we need to understand what is the attention, enough attention to them. See, this is my definition. If I was a kid, and this is what I would want from my parents. Attention for me is that if I have a curiosity about anything, about a subject or anything or somebody, that curiosity needs to be handled. The parent needs to help me handle that curiosity, whatever that is. That could be sex, that could be my friends, it could be drinking, it could be smoking, because nowadays it's become a norm that I see school kids drinking and smoking. Correct. So that curiosity, now unless and until my parent addresses that curiosity in me, I will not feel that he's given me enough attention. And this can only happen when the parents spend time with the kids.
Right. So it all boils down to time.
It's all about time. It's all about talking. See, when I spend time with my kid, it's not about talking about the world. It's talking about what he means world, what world means to him, his toys, his school, his teacher, his poems, his stories. That is attention.
Right.
Also, Devi, when you said you shook your head when he spoke about time, because I know that's a problem with many parents. Many of them are working. My point is very different. You may not have time to spend with your child, but you should be cued in to your child's emotions. A parent should be able to intuitively make out that something is wrong with my child, or my child is the expression is not right on my child's face, or this is not how he usually behaves, or he has started eating less, or she has started sleeping less. You have to be cued into these little things, and that should be the clue that I think it's time to chat with my child. So you may spend 10 minutes with your child every day, you may spend 5 hours with your child, or you may spend all 24 hours with your child. But if you are not cued in to your child's little nuances of the child's emotions, of the child's likes and dislikes, then this time is not going to help you.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So it's all quality time. I'll move it to quality time. Right.
I would say quality relationship.
Right. Great. I hope all the attendees got that. And I'm going to move on to the crux of this discussion, which is the questions by the parents. Okay. So our parents had a lot of questions, but I have actually grouped them into 4 main questions. Actually, earlier it was 3, but now I'm getting the 4th group. So one is, how do we protect our children who do not want to participate in such a talk or behavior when in a group? How can we protect them from being bullied? And if we are not able to do that, how do we protect them from the other repercussions, emotional distress, isolation, other kinds of, there are so many things that children can go through. How do we as parents, because we are still at a distance from their classroom environment, how can parents effectively manage this, and what kind of help can we take from the teachers and the schools to bridge this gap? I would let Dr. Vats talk first, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Ravi.
Yeah. So I would say, Devi, again here, stories come to a huge help to parents. I feel choose age appropriate stories for your child up to the age of 8. Because up to the age of 8, they are still open to listening to stories. After that, it's more about films, etc. You must tell them stories about when a character in the story felt alienated by a group, and what were the emotions that the person went through, and how did the person make up for it. You can talk about your own life story, that when I was in school, I wanted to belong to this group, but that group was all made of maths geniuses, and I was not so good in maths. And they used to ridicule me, they never took me in the group. But I told myself, never mind, if not this group, then another. So you are teaching resilience to your child by storytelling. You are preparing them for the next stage in their life which will come, which is where I feel sometimes parents, before they become a parent, need to undergo a training. Even to drive a car, we undergo a license. My question has always been, why is there no license in parenting? Because if there was a license in parenting, parents wouldn't be so clueless. It is not fair on them. You put another human being in their hands and say, go for it. So, and then parents don't know. Parents think it's all about nappy changing. And suddenly the child grows up and stalks back and doesn't eat and gives bad words. And suddenly you realize, oh God, my toddler's become a monster. So it's very, very important that stories, that's why you had the Panchatantra, you had the Jataka tales. It was all about preparing children for life. And if you see in all these stories books, which I have named also, there are enough stories about bullying, about belonging, etc. So stories are the best way to train your child's brain about life and what it's going to bring to them. And when your child actually goes through it, it's time to sit with your child and say, sweetheart, that's not the group for us, you know. And it's okay if they are saying things like that to you. I know it must be hurting you. I know what you're going through because I've gone through the same. Empathy is something that works very well with children. And I feel the lesser schools and parents interfere in friendship making, the better. Because otherwise you're becoming helicopter parents. I've seen parents go to other children and say, hey, tu mere bacche ke saath baat kyun nahi karta hai? Hello, that's my human choice. Who are you? And if I'm going to now get threatened by you and then make friends with your child, is that friendship? You know, so it's very, very important to understand that peer group pressure is something we have to prepare our children for. I mean, haven't we all grown up with peer group pressures? In our times, it was smoking, which was a pressure, drinking, which was a pressure. Now it's drugs. So it's the item which is different, but the pressure has always been the same. So it is very, very important that we had the fear of our parents. Remember in our mind that agar main galti karunga to, oh my God. It was not only a fear of our parents, it was also a sense of respect for our parents. We didn't want to fall in their eyes. That was our sense. I'm saying that only. Where is that relationship between a parent and a child? Yes. Somewhere it is missing. That's when I said become the conscience of your child in the early years, and then you will replace it with the real conscience in the child. So peer pressure is going to be there. You will have to train your child how to handle peer pressure, and don't train your child to always be the positive. Prepare your child for tears. Prepare your child for drawbacks. Prepare your child for failure. It's okay. Cry it out. It's part and parcel. Kabhi kabhi ye bhi hota hai. You will feel insulted. Think of me. I grew up with the name Popat. Do you know the double meanings that word has? Can you imagine the amount of bullying I must have gone through? How do you think my parents trained me? And I was a girl. Right. My brother was not teased about it because he's a boy. But being a girl, it was something that you would be surprised. I would walk down a street, I would hear cat calls from boys. And you don't know actually who's calling out to you. So that's bullying. That's peer pressure. Imagine I would have wanted to change my name there and then. I've gone so many times to my dad and said when I was a youngster, why can't we change our surname? But after marriage, I've still retained the name because my husband wants that. He wants that the identity that you grew up with, you should be proud of. So it's very, very important. We have to prepare our children. There is no goody-goody world out there. Prepare your children.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Vats. And I think your storytelling technique will work very well for younger groups, right? Mr. Rove, what do you think? What is a good way to continue this over the teen years? Because I don't think teenagers will listen to our stories. What do you think as a tactical instructor?
I think, stories, because most of my engagements that I have with 9th standard, 10th standard and above kids, it is about storytelling. But more so, it is about storytelling from my life, where I am not, it's not some asterisks or Tintin creating, it's not fictitious characters. It's I am talking about stories that have happened with me. So what happens when I share those stories of embarrassment, stories of failure, stories of disgust, when I share these stories with a lot of school kids, what happens is that they see me have that expressions of disgust, of embarrassment, correct? And then they see me come out of that. So, it's like a role model. I'm modeling the way, how to do it. Right. And that is exactly, because I have seen a lot of parents, they are so scared to tell their kids that they failed at something. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? So the biggest challenge that we're facing here is that where parents have been through some brilliant experiences and they have this, this inhibition that how can I tell my son that, I faltered on the stage, I could not talk to people, and, I was scared of public speaking. That's a very stupid thing. But you tell your kids that, hey, you know what? I had this fear. And it's a fact. When I was in 10th standard, I used to be scared like hell to talk about, I was given an opportunity to, give a speech. And I couldn't even read the speech, which was right in front of me on the paper. And that was me in 10th standard. And today I talk with, in front of thousands of people. So I have countered that fear. So now I'm going to tell my son that, hey, you know what? This is who I was. I was scared, but this is how I overcame it. Correct. So that's very important. The parents need to have the courage to talk about their feelings. One. Second thing is that parents should never, ever transfer their definition of success to their kids. My definition of success may be to drive a BMW, but I can't put that onto my kids. Hey, you know what? I couldn't buy a good car. You should buy a good car and a good house. Let him define what success means to him. Correct. That is where you're empowering your kid. That is where you are making them comfortable, that when they come to you with a problem, you will not judge them. Correct. So that's very important. And talking about this peer pressure, every single class, okay, I can guarantee you this, every single class has at least 4 to 5 groups. One out of which one is a group which is into malicious language and thoughts and all that stuff. Correct. But there are other groups as well. I was never a bright student in academics, but I would always hang out with the bright students of the class. Correct. That used to be my group because I could connect with something else that I had.
Right. But in this case, if the child is pressured to be in a group, and let's say the child indulges in such behavior, whether he wantedly did it or not out of pressure, or he just did it because of some conditioning, what is a good way to actually handle this behavior? That is something that most parents are asking, because these are still kids, right? How do we handle this? Because they have done something, and I'm sure most of them are still embarrassed about it. But how do we handle this? Do we handle this with punishment, with embarrassment, with what can we do? Dr. Vas?
I think the best way is sensitive firmness. So there are 2 aspects to sensitive firmness. Sensitive means you sit with the child, always face to face with the child at the same level, and you ask the child, are you feeling good about what you have done? Tell me. Okay. And that's the way to start the conversation. And if the child says, yes, I'm feeling very proud about it, then ask the child, is it in line with the rules that this family believes in? So you are making the child aware and taking the child on the right path of the questioning. Firmness means right from childhood, if you have taught rules to your child that bad words are not spoken in this house. Bad words are not spoken by any one of us, whether in the house or outside the house. If these are rules, then you know that it's time to talk to your child and say, so, see, you have broken a rule. And now there will be repercussions. Repercussions can be very simple things. Nowadays, children love their phone, the internet, take away those for a few days. Then the child knows that these will be taken away. I don't want to do it again. Punishment should never be of ridiculing or insulting the child, or talking about all this in front of somebody. That's the mistake we do. We talk about it in front of other siblings or other family members. And that's what puts off children, especially of this age, because please understand, ego is at the foremost at 2 stages in life. One is when the child is a toddler, and one is when the child is a teenager. The ego is always first. And that's when, if you insult them, if you ridicule them, they react. They don't respond. They want to now give back to you and hurt you the way you have hurt them. So it is very, very important. Sensitive firmness is the best way to deal with it. And if you feel that you are not able to deal with it, time to bring in the counselor. That's what counselors are for. You know, when your child is physically sick and you are not able to handle it, you bring in a doctor. So why are you so afraid to bring in a counselor? It's time to bring in a counselor rather than you lose your child. So it's better to bring in a counselor.
Right. Thank you so much for saying that, Dr. Watts, because I'm going to bring in a very important point here. Mr. Rove, what do we do in a situation when the parents are in denial? Because Dr. Watts said that we have to bring in a counselor if we are not able to do it. But for that, we require to know that we are not able to do it. And there is a problem that we are not able to solve. But what happens? Most parents are in denial. How can we handle this?
So the first question I would want to ask all my viewers, all our viewers watching this is, are your kids sitting next to you while you are watching this? That's my first question.
My kids
Second, brilliant. Second is that parents being in denial, I would say, is a very, very, very big challenge, because every time I have spoken in an institution, there have been so many kids who have come to me and they have told me that they have discussed their issues with the parents, but the parents are in denial while the kid is telling them that I have a problem. So the parents are like, no, you don't have any problem. You just need to do this, do that, and don't listen to counselors. Now that is where the parents' ego is coming in play. Instead of, and it's a very stupid thing. Okay, now as doctor perfectly said, when my kid is not well, will my ego satisfy any need? If I say, no, my kid is well, I don't need a doctor. I mean, it's a very stupid thing to do. Correct. So in such a case, what we need to sensitize is that's where the academicians, that's where the teachers come into play. Now it becomes the teacher's job to have a watch, on the behavior of the kids. And I'm very sure if the teachers are trained well, they can identify pre-indicators of, where they can identify that certain kid needs certain help. Now they can convince the parents, saying that, no, your kid needs help. And if the parents are still in denial, I think the institution should go ahead and subtly introduce a counselor to the kid. May not, the word I'm using is subtly, not the hardcore counseling, a very subtle counseling where at least, there is a small change in the behavior of the kid. Now that change can be sold to the parents again. It's very sad I'm using this word, sold to the parents, because they need to be sold every damn thing today. You sell that small change to the parents and say that, see, we did this and he's got better or she's got better. Now, we suggest that you take it full-fledged.
Right. And then one more very important thing is, if the child refuses to participate, and if there is a negative role of the child within the group that is perceived by the group, how, as a parent of that child and as the parent of the other children also, how can they come together and protect this child? Is there a way to do it? I mean, how can we enlist the help of the institutions? Because sometimes the institutions are in denial too, right? For a lot of reasons. How can we bridge this gap?
So what about homeschooling parents? Which institution should they depend on? And that is why I always say that a parent is the first point. And one of your listeners asked a question that, isn't parental consent required for counseling? Yes, it is required for counseling if it is a professional counseling. But if the teacher is going to counsel the child and ask pertinent questions and understand the mindset of the child, then that does not require a parental consent, because it comes under the teacher's duties and her purview. So it's very, very important that when we say the institution plays a role, yes, it does. But I feel the institution's role is 20%, maybe 30%. The rest of the role squarely rests on the parents' shoulders, because as I said, a parent must know what the child is up to, communicate with the child. What has happened these days when children come home from school, we start interrogating the child. We don't communicate with the child. How was your maths exam? Did you reply to all the answers? What, you lost your pen again? How many pens do I have to give you? Did you eat your snack box? Every day you come with an empty snack box. See, what is this? This is an interrogation. Where is the communication? Who did you play with today? What did you all play? Did you enjoy playing that? Were there any adults around? Did you join any new groups today? See, though that is more of you're getting to know more about the child and not just the child's performance. So I think I differ when I say that institution, you cannot always depend on the institution these days.
Right. So, so my question was more to do with, when the children, because these groups, the friends are all from the school, right? So because the teachers have access to this entire group, so it is definitely more accessible for the student as well. So how can we make use of this accessibility in case of such a thing?
So in case of cases like this, like the Bombay case and the Delhi case, of course, the school will have to take action against the children. It can go from rustication to minor punishment or to whatever, I don't know. Rustication to me does not work. It is like saying this child is now no more my problem, go to another school. I feel it is very important that all these children need to be put under counseling. When they will attend an hour of counseling every day, they will realize that some amount of change will happen in their attitude. And also for that 1 hour, they'll be kept away from their other activities. So it works the best, because it is very important that they reach a realization of where they have gone wrong. They shouldn't just say it was wrong because a parent is telling them or an adult is telling them it's wrong. Have they reached an internal realization that what they have done is wrong?
Right. Mr. Rowe, what do you say for this?
I think, this is something that I've suggested many institutions, but because of, the pressure that they have from the parents, they don't really get into that. But I think parents need, the first level of counseling. As Madam was saying, that they need to have a license before they become parents. But, nevertheless, once you are a parent, I think it's very important that we go through certain professional understanding of basic child psychology as to how children think, what are those indicators that we can pick. Because when I talk about child safety, when I talk about abuse children face from helpers in the school or even teachers, I'm talking about sexual abuse. There are a lot of indicators that those children who are going through abuse give. But, as parents, they don't understand how to look at those indicators. And they fail, and, the child ends up going through abuse for many months and many years. So it's very important that parents go through certain programs where they are told or they are educated on, how to understand their kids better. I still remember there used to be, when I was a kid, I'm talking about maybe around 6th standard, 7th standard, or maybe a little more than that. There used to be a serial, a show that used to come on Zee TV. I'll never forget that. It used to be called Tir Kaman. One side used to be kids and one side used to be parents. And then there used to be a host who would pick up a question, and, it would be the kids versus the parents kind of a thing. And that was such a brilliant show where the host would pick some very, very pertinent questions, and, how he would mediate and, come to a resolution between the two. And so many of my own challenges with my family got sorted out because we used to watch that program together.
Right. Awesome.
So that was a brilliant one. I don't know why it stopped.
Devi, can I also add, it's very important that today's parents go to experts for their problems. I see on Facebook groups of moms, they ask medical questions there to each other, as if there are no doctors in this world, So it's very, very important that you may have WhatsApp groups with your class parents. You may have WhatsApp groups of a parent community, but there has to be sensibility about what kind of questions to reach out to them for and what kind of questions to reach out to experts for.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely right. Thank you, Dr. Watts and Mr. Rowe, for this wonderful talk. I think we covered a lot in an hour, and right. And thank you to all the attendees who stayed with us. And we will, have you watch the recording if you want to watch it later on. And we will also provide more resources from Dr. Watts and Mr. Rove. He's a tactical instructor. You can access more of his programs and talks, and Dr.
Devi,
Watts too. Right.
yeah, I just have one. Can I have 1 minute? I want to share something. Yeah. Coming to what parents can do now.
Right.
There has to be something that parents take away from the 1 hour that they spent here. There must be something that they can take away and implement right now with their kids. Okay. Now there is this formula that it's my own research. I don't have any proof of validity or anything like that, but it's worked so far. There is something called as a social structure, which comprises of 4 elements: care, dependability, trust, and integrity. If you have these 4 traits ingrained in any relationship, you will see that relationship becomes like a titanium rope. Okay, I will repeat these 4 again: care, dependability, trust, and integrity. Okay, now these 4 somehow need to be integrated between all the 3 stakeholders: the parents and the kids and the teachers or the teaching staff, academicians, and the parents and the academicians. Once you have these 4 traits active, which are driving the relationships between these 3, you will see a massive difference in the way how we are treating each other.
Right.
Because when it comes to, madam was talking about the word, she had a problem with rape. Now that word becomes insignificant, or it becomes neutralized when I have respect for that person. If there is a woman I have a respect for, I can never ever in my life think about that 4 word for her. Now, what we need to do as a society, what we need to do as parents, what we need to do as experts talking on this subject is that we need to tell everyone who's watching to start ingraining these 4 characteristics into their lives. So the homework that I have for parents today is that starting today, okay, do one thing, activity or anything that shows your child that you care, genuinely that you care. Do one activity that shows that, you are dependable. Do one activity that proves to your kid that you are trustworthy. Do one activity today that proves to your kids that you have the integrity. You have their integrity as important for you. So I think this is a homework that we can take back, and I would request all parents to please do this on a daily basis. You see what happens to your relationship in 1 week.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rove, for that wonderful, actionable takeaways. Dr. Watts, do you have any quick takeaways for our parents?
Just 3. Please ensure that you develop intuitive parenting, which means you are able to recognize signs in your child when your child is upset, angry, confused, embarrassed, etc. Number 2, have conversations with your child, not interrogations. And number 3, don't spy on your children. If you want to ask your child something, be frank and upfront, because many parents spy on Facebook and social media platforms of their children by even making a fake account in another girl's name so that they know what their child is up to. But that's wrong, because when your child will come to know about this, it will be a complete breakdown of trust, which is very important. If you keep these 3 in mind, you will have a very good relationship with your child. And Devi, I must thank you for being a fabulous moderator.
No, thank you so much. It's my
absolutely
pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure for me. It was a it was a power-packed session for me with so many takeaways, and I hope for all our attendees as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Watts. Thank you so much, Mr. Rove, for your time.
Thank you, Devi. Thank you, ma'am.
Short notice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to all the listeners, this will be available to you. The complete recording will make it available to you. And thank you for attending. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much. Namaskar.